Thank you, Patrick. It's great to be here. I'm Weldon Dodd. I'm a leader at Kanji. We make Apple device management and security products. I'm actually not going to talk very much about Kanji. If you want to learn more about what we do, we have a table over there. You can come talk to us outside. I wanted to spend a little time today talking about expertise. My career as a Mac admin spans 30 years. I ran the Mac lab and the Next lab at the University of California. That was my first job where someone paid me to work on computers. And I was fortunate that I came in at a good time in the industry when I was able to leverage expertise in a particular area to help drive my career. And I wanted to share a few thoughts. But before I get into the presentation, I did want to take a moment just to acknowledge how wonderful it is to be here in Gothenburg with all of you. I love being a part of the Mac admin community. It's been really influential in my career. I see all the things that I love about being a Mac admin represented with the participants, the people that have come here to Gothenburg, the way that the community shares information and helps each other and lifts each other up. It's really wonderful to be here. So I'm pleased about it. This is my first visit to Sweden. I've never been here before, although my family has connections to Sweden. So my oldest brother studied at the University of Lund for a year. He did a year abroad in Lund. And then if we go further back, my great-great-grandfather, who left Ireland in the 1850s, was a cabin boy and put on a ship. He sailed all around Europe, and he visited the Baltics. I started to say Black Sea, and I said, no, that's the other direction. The Baltic Sea has been to Sweden several times, all around Europe, around Africa, India, back to the British Islands, and then Australia, and on to California, which is where my family has been since. I was born and raised in California, but that legacy of the sea has stayed with my family. My father was in the Navy. My brother lived on a sailboat. I raced sailboats in college. And so I'm going to use a nautical theme in my presentation to talk about technology from a few hundred years ago and talk about sailing. So this is the HMS Centurion. It's a sailing ship that was commissioned in the 1700s. It was part of the War of the Austrian Succession, and this ship went out hunting Spanish galleons. It made its way from the Atlantic, rounded Cape Horn at the southern tip of South America to enter the Pacific on its way to the Philippines. And as it got to Cape Horn, it encountered some really severe storms. And they had a hard time finding their location and where they were. They thought they had got past Cape Horn, and they turned north and immediately ran into land and knew that they needed to go further west. So they continued on their way. They were trying to make their way up to the Juan Fernandez Islands, which are off the coast of Chile in the Pacific. And this island actually is part of that chain. It's now called the Robinson Crusoe Island because there's a fellow who was abandoned there. He lived there for 4.5 years by himself before he was picked up. And that is the inspiration that Defoe took to write the novel Robinson Crusoe. So the Chilean government renamed the island to Robinson Crusoe to try to take advantage of the tourist trade. But this was the spot that the Centurion was trying to make their way to. They were running low on supplies. They were delayed by this storm. Their crew was experiencing scurvy from a lack of vitamin C. And I'm sure we've all heard of scurvy, but it's a terrible condition, right? Your gums soften. Eventually, your internal organs soften and fail, and it's a miserable way to go. So they were desperate to make their way up here and find this island. They knew where they were latitude-wise, north and south. They knew that they were on the correct latitude, but they had no idea if the islands were east or west. They didn't know their longitude. So they made their way east, thinking that was the right direction to go. More bad weather, stormy seas. They spent a few days going east, realized that was the wrong direction, and turned around and went west. They lost 10 days through not knowing their position, and half of the crew died. Half of the crew perished from scurvy. Now, there's two things that would have helped, right? One is if they knew where they were, okay, that would have helped. The other is, bananas, right? If they'd had bananas, they would have got some vitamin C. Not as much as you get from limes, right? That's where limey comes from, is sailors eating limes. But that would have helped. They did, as I mentioned, know their latitude, where they were north and south, because they had a sextant, this instrument up here. So you can sight off of in the northern hemisphere, the North Star, Polaris. And the thing that's amazing about Polaris is that it's never more than 1% off from celestial north. So if you can get a sighting on Polaris, you can measure the angle to the horizon, and you can figure out your latitude, and you know where you are north of the equator, how many degrees north of the equator. But longitude, you can't figure out at sea. Now there are some ways to figure it out. The ancients knew how to do it. The people at this time, they knew how to do it, but it involves time. Time is the key to knowing your longitude, where you are east or west. So the way they would do this anciently is they would observe some phenomenon like a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, and they would take careful notes about what time it occurred at their location, and they would compare their notes with a colleague who was in a different location, what time they saw this eclipse happen simultaneously, and you calculate the difference in time, which was measured off of local noon, or when the sun was at its peak in the sky, and you would measure time off that, and you compare the difference in time, and now you can calculate longitude, the difference east and west between two locations. So if I wanted to find the difference between Denver, where I came from, I live in the mountains now, to Gothenburg, right? I could do that if I knew what time it was in Denver, and I compared that time to, say, local time here in Gothenburg. I could figure out the difference and calculate my position, right? The difference in longitude. So around this time in the 18th century, the invention of the pendulum clock made these measurements super accurate. So the first one, invented by a Dutch inventor, Huygens, it was accurate to about 10 seconds a day, right? Which was really good. And so you could get really good measurements on longitude. But again, you had to have two clocks in two different locations and compare notes and send that correspondence back and forth. It might be weeks or months. If there was a cloudy sky and you couldn't observe the eclipse, well, you might have to wait for the next one. And so now it's months. So two problems, right? This is not going to work on a ship because you can't wait weeks or months to exchange correspondence with someone else about when they observed the lunar eclipse, okay? The other solution would be to take a clock with you. So if I set it to local time here in Gothenburg and then sail away, right, and I observe noon, the sun reaches its zenith and midday, and I can take a measurement then, I can compare it to the clock that's still on Gothenburg time, okay? That could work, but that's the second problem. Pendulum clocks don't work on a ship. And it turns out that rocking motion is not compatible with the pendulum clock. So the next big invention was John Harrison in England, who invented a spring-driven clock that was designed to be a marine chronometer, a clock that a ship could take with them. So if it was set to Greenwich Mean Time, or if it was set to Gothenburg time, I could take it with me. If it stayed accurate, now I could take a measurement in the middle of the ocean at noon and compare that to the clock and calculate how far east or west I had traveled. But I need this technology. I need this clock to make it happen. That's the clockwork. This is the H5, which was the model after it. This was something like you would see on a ship. Okay, this is the kind of thing my great-great-grandfather carried on his ship, right? A marine chronometer. There's a bunch of innovations in here that are super cool. One of them is there's a metal coil that would adjust to changes in temperature. So the clock would still be accurate even if the temperature would swing up and down as you're crossing the ocean. All right? Amazing piece of technology. It revolutionized marine navigation because now you could accurately determine your longitude while you were at sea. Something that was not possible before this moment in history. Okay? What they would do is you would sail to the right latitude and then beat down a westerly, right, like head straight west or east at that latitude to find your destination. But being able to calculate your position opened up all these new possibilities. So today, right, that's the same way they do it, right? They pull out the sextant and the compass and the chronometer and determine their location, the sighting off the sun or a celestial no? Okay. Yeah, no, that's all gone. It's electronic navigation today. So what happened? GPS, right? In the age of sail, no one imagined, even considered that we might launch rockets up from the Earth to distribute satellites above the Earth in orbit, a whole constellation of satellites that provided, incredibly accurate timekeeping as well as, the ability to triangulate your position from all these satellites and get a location precise to just a couple feet, right? All of the expertise that sailors had developed in using instruments like a sextant and a compass and a chronometer to calculate or orient and find their position was gone, right? Now, they still teach it. If you go to the Naval Academy or something, right, Merchant Marine, you could learn how to do it. But it's just in case. It's for emergencies, right? If you lost power, if you forgot to put new batteries in the GPS before you left, right, you might use it, okay? But all that expertise is gone. What remained was the role of a navigator stayed the same. It was still important to know where you are, where you're going, and what's the safe path to get there. So even though the tools changed, the expertise that had been developed in using certain tools changed, right? The role remained the same. So I want to lay out a pattern that I think exists and that we can see in other technology changes, okay? When GPS was introduced, the very first units that you could get, they would tell you your position. They would give you your latitude and longitude. But you still had to consult a paper chart to plot where you were. So you had to take the information and refer to the chart. Now, the chart had a bunch of other information on it. It has depth, right? It has obstacles. It has the preferred route to enter a harbor. All that kind of information's on the chart. So you had this new technology, this new tool that was disconnected from the rest of your process. And the expert still needed to step in and translate this new technology, this new tool, to the other processes that they were using, the things that they were used to, and combine them together to get to the result that was needed, okay? The next step was to bring those tools together into something new, right? real-time GPS location with electronic charts so that you could see your location directly. And that manual step of like connecting the two pieces of technology or connecting the two tools together, that wasn't needed anymore. So the expert played a really important role in that transition of building a bridge between these two technologies, the old one and the new one. But then eventually the technologies converge, the tools converge, and you have one tool. But this opens up all kinds of new possibilities. Now, if you can chart your position over time, and you can keep track of it, and easily compare my position from an hour ago, a day ago, 3 days, a month ago, you get new insights about your speed over time, right? And how that's varied and what the averages are and all kinds of things that would be really difficult, maybe possible, but would be difficult to calculate if you didn't have these tools brought together. And that's a pattern I think we see in technology, right? Something new comes along, something revolutionary that changes the game. It requires new expertise. It does away with some of the old, but there's a moment where you have to connect the two, right? And build that bridge and do some translation. The next evolution is to bring those tools together, and then new insights come, and we repeat the cycle all over again. Okay? So I have 3 pieces of advice, 3 things to share, maybe, and something for you to consider as you think about how you navigate change and how you navigate being an expert, right? We're at a point now where we're seeing specialization, right, really enter into our market. Now, specialization expands or grows to meet the needs of the market, to meet the size of the market. In larger organizations, it's very common to have multiple platform teams, right? A mobile team or a mobility team, a Windows team, a Mac team, right? And they use different tools. Some of those teams get so big that roles can get defined by the tool that you use. Like your identity on that team is you are the admin of a specific tool. Some of you are in different roles where you need to be a bit more of a generalist, right? And you need to cover a few different tools or a few different things. I'm going to suggest you're going to see this cycle play out across all of those roles, right? Where specialization or expertise in a particular tool is really important, right? We get massive productivity gains from that. It's helpful. It drives us forward. But there's some other things to consider. So, my first piece of advice here is to stay connected, okay? I put a pin up here because from economics, Adam Smith talked about specialization and the division of labor by talking about a pin, right? Making a metal pin. That there was one person that would mine the ore, another that would refine it. There was one that would make it into steel, another that would extrude it into a wire, another that would fit a head on that pin, and another that might sharpen it and put it in a box, right? And the productivity gains from having all of those specialized roles was massive. Back in the time, 300 years ago almost, a team of pin makers could make 4,800 pins a day. If you asked one person to fashion pins, right, from beginning to end, they would never be able to achieve that kind of number. And that's the same thing we see in our teams, right? By specializing and dividing the work up, we can get a lot more done. We can be a lot more productive. Milton Friedman, who's an American, right, he talked about a pencil, that the truth is there's no one person who knows how to make a pencil, right? There's someone that gets the lead or the graphite now. There's someone else that harvests the trees and plants new ones. There's someone who fashions the wood into a dowel and bores out the center, and someone else that fits the graphite in. Someone else does the eraser and does the little metal coupling to attach it to the end of the pencil. And they all know their piece of it, but no one person understands the whole job, how to make a pencil. So that's the counterbalancing force, right? It's great to specialize, but we don't want to become disconnected from the goal that we're trying to achieve, the purpose that we serve for the organization. So stay connected to what the organization wants to do, what the goal is. Understand the big picture. Maybe you don't make pencils, right? But maybe you deliver financial services to your customers, or you provide education to children or adults, or you work in retail, or whatever it is. Like, understand what the pencil is. Understand as much of it as you can. Stay connected to the business. I'd also suggest stay connected to each other, right? There's a lot of expertise in this room, a lot of it. Our strength as a community is to draw on that, but also to draw out the next experts, right? Who's going to speak on stage next year? Some of them are in this room, and they'll be first-time speakers. So look around, stay connected with the people around you, encourage them to share their expertise, their piece of the puzzle, so that we can all gain from it. Stay connected. Did I get this right? I did mess this up. That slide's supposed to say stay confident. I deleted the wrong one when I was cleaning things up. Stay confident is my second idea. Imposter syndrome affects all of us, right? We all feel a bit sus about things. So lean on each other, right? But just understand that you belong here, right? You belong here. You have a place in this community. Step into it, right? And be comfortable there. It's going to be all right. One of the downsides to be wary of alongside of this is perfectionism. So for your own mental health, like if your role in your organization is to be an expert, like you're the one who knows everything there is to know about how automated device enrollment works in your organization, you have the keys to the kingdom with your AP&S certificate and Apple Business Manager credentials and so on, right? One of the negatives could be putting too much pressure on yourself to be perfect in all that you do because you're the expert. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not going to give advice, but I will say, so this is something to watch for. Don't fall into the trap of perfectionism. Okay. My last item is stay curious. This cycle will repeat. There will be a new technology that comes along and disrupts everything that we've known before, and it will be important to learn that and adapt and grow. Your role as an expert in that transition is to help translate that change to your existing processes within the org. It's to help build a bridge between the old and the new. And the tools will come together, and you'll get something new, and new insights will come. Okay? But stay curious and keep learning. I had Midjourney generate this image for me, and I mostly included it just to show how really comically bad it is at drawing bananas, right? Some of them are yellow, so I guess we'll give it points there, but yeah. One of the best ways I know to learn is to write. And now I know maybe not everyone is comfortable with writing, or I've been through that too, right? But let's go back to stay confident. You all have something to share. Practice writing it down to help convey that information. work on your ability to summarize what you know and organize that information to share it with other people. That is a skill that you will use for your entire career. Even if the specific tool that you use changes, if the expertise that you draw on changes over time, your ability to communicate clearly, organize information, and summarize will serve you well. If you don't feel confident in writing, one of the best places to start is with reading. So be a reader. Use that to get into writing. Even if you don't write big, long blog posts, thousands of words like some of the people in the room, a really nicely put together email of a couple hundred words to your team or your boss or someone, a colleague, is going to go a long way in helping you to share your expertise in a way that's going to be impactful. So, stay connected, stay confident, stay curious, right? The tools are going to change, but your role as a navigator will not. Whoever you work for, whoever you work with, the ability to figure out where you are, where you need to go, and how to get there safely is going to be important whatever you do. And your ability to communicate that to the people around you is going to keep everyone safe. Okay? It's great to be with you. Thank you for your time.